Hey, it is Wednesday, and you are here for another on the road edition of Litvak Leadership Live. And I am here with my new friend, Mialei Iske, who has a real unique perspective on leadership. We're going to be talking about this and more, solving the real problem for motivated leaders. So, hey, Mialei, how you doing today?
Great, Sean. Thanks so much for having me on.
So, since everyone is talking about the weather, how did you get hit by Snowmageddon? We'll just start there.
Well, I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so being a little bit over a hill from Denver, depending on where the storm comes from, is how much snow we get. So when they slide down the Front Range, we don't get much because we're in what they call the donut hole. But we did get variations on the cold air. At first, it backed up from the southeast, and then it came around from the north, and that's when things got serious. Sunday night was 20 below all night long.
That's cold?
That's cold.
That's cold.
So we got to -1 all day on Monday. So yeah. So now we're kind of like thawing out, but it's snowing outside. So it's an interesting combination. So, you know, 25 right now.
Oh, 25 is not bad. I can't see where it is. I think, it's 29 where I am. So that's not bad. So, okay, so tell me, before we dig into your specific, look at leadership, how do you define leadership?
Well, it's interesting because I really believe, and I think that's a great start to the question, because I really believe that the traditional org chart with the guy at the top kind of leads us to believe he's omniscient. So when I look at an org chart, what I want to do is I want to take it and turn it 90 degrees to the right so that the people that are supposedly at the bottom are really in today, and everybody else is in some point in time ahead of us, not above us, ahead of us. So as I look at my leader, they should be thinking about tomorrow, next week, next month. And depending on how high up you are, you should be ahead of your team, not above your team. Because your team
should be leading from the front, breaking through obstacles.
Right. So I always told my teams, you guys are the train. The team leaders are the links between the cars. The team members are the cars, and I'm the tracks. Because if I'm on the train, who's guiding the train? And who's actually getting us over obstacles and around the bends and up there with leadership that's above me, in front of me, I hope, so that the train doesn't stop. If I stop and go back and get on the train because I'm worried about today, the whole team slows down because they're looking at me. I don't want them looking at me. I want them looking at the goal.
So the leader being the train tracks, that is a very interesting analogy that I have not heard before. Go on with that some more.
And it works because then if the team is cruising, and I want more than anything for my teams to fly in ways they don't even realize. So as we set goals together and we say, this is what we're going to do, the example that I have is when we went from phone support for enterprise customers to letting them start to find their own answers in the knowledge base. That's a huge transformation because you hired people to be on the phones all day. Now you're saying, now fill up the repository so you're not needed anymore. And you're dealing with massive fears because they're like, you're going to fire all of us. No, wait a minute. What we're trying to do is lower the volume on all the repetitive stuff that they could go find the answers for. So how do you do that? You meet them with the answer in a different avenue so they don't need me on the phone. Now they can go to the web.
So what kind of industry was this in?
Oh, this was software support. This was Oracle. This was the big stuff.
Okay, so this is when you go in and it says go into the knowledge base, or there's a question and answer bot creating all that instead of someone calling up and going, you are 35 in the queue. Your wait time is 18 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can't hire to that. And that was the thing we said. You could build buildings, you can hire to that, and then you break the company. That is not the curve you want it to meet. You want to figure out how to bend that curve keep your best people in great spots, keep them happy, and add to their jobs. And that's what we did. So what did I have to do? I had to figure out, for when the vice president said, this is what we're going to do, I had to back all those questions into today. What are we going to do that's going to get us there? So I can't be where they are because they're on the phones.
Right.
I have to be in front of them to get them through the switches as the tracks to think differently and to use our time differently.
So when people were embracing fear over career and job elimination, but you actually saw it as career and job expansion.
Right.
How did you communicate that strategy to them in a way that they could embrace, endorse, and cheer?
We actually went to the data. So every single customer request that came in got a 4-byte code in the front of the description. Okay. And then they started to realize we're getting the same question in the same topic every single day, and everybody's getting it. So now you've got 20 of them in a day. Document that one. And then they could see, wait a minute, only those 20 calls went away. Now I'm not answering dumb questions. Now I get something different. And we did that across the entire organization. So here and our counterparts in Orlando, Florida. So now you're looking at the entire breadth of ours was happened to be general ledger. We ask people in accounts payable, people in accounts receivable. Remember, all software support.
Right.
Tag the front of your description so we could see where the volume is. The data sold it for us.
So when you say, and I'm not a data guy in the way you're talking about it, when you say tag it, what exactly do you mean?
So we just put the 4-byte code and they wrote what the 4-byte code meant. The 4-byte code meant I'm in this particular part of the software and I keep getting the same question. So it turned into topics. Okay, so here's where the color of the job came in that was so amazing. Everybody was paired off with a mentor, including me, including my team leaders. My mentor was my senior manager. And all of it came to light because now I can attach that topic to a person who wants to develop a specialty. So now instead of I have to know everything, now I've got to learn my specialty.
So how does that work with leadership, with developing specialties in people when you're in a inbound call center? So it doesn't frustrate the person calling where they get transferred from, Johnny to Mary to Jack to Jill to get their answer.
It's a great question because we said to the customers, can I put you on hold? I'm going to ask the person who knows that. They would say yes because they'd get the answer back. They didn't get transferred. They got the answer.
So did the subject matter expert, do they actually take calls or do they just sit around and wait for a question?
Well, see, and everybody had some sort of a level of expertise. So the more junior job codes got one specialty. The seniors got 2 or 3 different specialties that were more in depth and bigger. And they were expected to train each other in what we called brown bag lunches so that you had a glimpse into somebody else's specialty. They all know what each other's specialties were. And you put the customer on hold, you hold on to them, you don't transfer them. And you say, who's got this? And they'll say, I do. Well, come here, let's talk about this. Sometimes they put the customer on a speakerphone to talk through it. And then we started to ask development if they could help us with certain things we couldn't answer. And they said yes.
Like what?
So if there were like a new feature, okay, what are you guys going to call this? Well, then we'd start naming stuff and we'd start asking them, what are you guys going to release? And they'd say, this is what we're going to release. And they say, okay, so what are the, trap doors? What are the things that we're not sure about? And they would give us the information, or we would take something that wasn't working quite right and we'd tell them and they'd fix it. So everything became an inner working of working together instead of one guy on a phone answering all by himself and getting frustrated and frustrating the customer.
So when you talk about solving the real problem for motivated leaders, how does that statement apply to what you're telling us about now?
Okay, so what it did was it evolved, because every time I would do another video in the Facebook group, I kept hearing myself say the same thing: ask more questions, ask more questions, ask more questions. So as a leader, if I'm not sitting on the top of that org chart and I'm in front and I don't know what's going on the train, they expect me to ask questions. They don't ask me if I know everything, because they want to know if I care enough to learn their job.
Okay.
So we start talking about servant leadership. Servant leadership is powerful, but it's also listening. I don't come to the team with the answers. I come to the team with my questions. And I expect them to help me to understand what they're doing. And I expect them to tell me what's working and what's not working. And then I get back off the train and I go try to solve it before the train meets me, or on the track.
So when you say as the leader, you go to the team with questions, not questioning as to why did you do this,
right?
But questioning. Give me an example of a question that you would ask that would draw them out.
So let's say that you have a spike in something because something was changed, and all of a sudden you've got this massive number of requests coming in. And you go out there and you stand on the, behind the team leader and you say, don't say anything. I just want to listen. And you can listen to what the team's doing and how frustrated they are and things that happen. And then you pull the team leader in and you say, how can I help? And they say, well, they changed this and they changed that, and we can't do this morning and we're having to scramble. Okay, so then I get on the phone. I can call development. I can call the people that run the phone systems. I'm in there when they need me, and then I get out of the way. So if they need something, I don't tell them what they need. I ask them what they need. And we didn't have screw ups because everybody was just like so engaged because they knew that they had to say. I wanted to learn their jobs. I wanted to know what they needed. So it's always asking more questions to see what to do instead of looking at it from the outside and saying, this is what I think should be done, which is insulting.
So when they told you what they needed, as the leader, were you always able to give them what they needed or give them something even better than what they thought they needed?
Well, I can remember one time where they changed, where development, completely different division of development, changed how the actual software displayed on the screen, and we couldn't read anything. We came in that morning, couldn't read anything on a PC, nothing on the screen. And the analysts were literally printing everything. We were going through reams of paper every hour because they couldn't read anything. Well, that morning, the executive vice president was with us. And I explained to him what happened. And he said, wait, were you guys not asked? And we said, we've been asking them. Let us test stuff. Well, it didn't take long because he was 4 or 5 levels above me. And all he did was make a phone call. Let us help. From there on, we tested everything that came in that software system before we got surprised.
Before it was rolled out.
And we participated with them. So because of the connections I had, because I'm not afraid of anybody. I don't believe in being afraid of people above me. I don't tolerate that. And I don't want people on my team. Again, turn that org chart on its side and go where you need to get the help you need. And expect them to listen. Expect them to help you. Because we're all in this together. And if we're not, we got a different problem.
So my guest yesterday was all about culture. Kai Liefert. So how did what you're advising, what you're saying should be implemented, how did it change the culture of your slice of the organization?
Well, we just really had a very different approach because we were all about working on tomorrow so that it didn't run over us. And a lot of teams were in the very reactive mode, where it was like, we've got so much in the backlog and so many calls. And people said, well, your stuff's easier. I said, yeah, and I have half the staff you have. I still have just as many numbers of hours to cover. We just happened to do what we were asked to do, and that's to take the proactive approach to meet tomorrow. And we did. And there were different ways we did it because we asked for the help we needed, especially from development. So you'd go to the place that can actually turn off some of those issues for you, and you ask them to help you.
So that phrase, I've never heard it before, but it makes so much sense. Work on tomorrow so it doesn't run you over.
Mm-hmm.
Give some real life application to that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, let's see, how could I put this? Even learning from each other, who do we really learn from? Do we learn from the stars? So if you have a really tremendous leader, it's almost impossible to learn how to lead from that person. So I'm going to give you an assertion. We learn more from working with lousy leaders. I'm going to tell you that. And the reason we do is because of how they make us feel. A great leader gives us safety, they give us assurance, and we walk away and we think, how do they do that? So if we had nothing but lousy leaders, I'm going to challenge you that you actually have an advantage. We can apply that. We can actually say to somebody, how did that person make you feel? Now do the opposite of that, because you can see how they make you feel. Well, in the situation where you're talking about how you're going to meet tomorrow, what makes you afraid of tomorrow? The biggest fear I honestly had for my team was they were going to have so much volume, they wouldn't want to come to work anymore. We had teams that honestly were ready to quit. There was so much volume. Well, as a manager, how do I help that not be true? And if I start today and I only shave 1% off, and I can do that every week, in 50 weeks in a year, I've shaved off 50% of what they were going to have to meet. So whatever it is I'm afraid of is what's going to tell me I have to deal with it.
So your statement that we learn more working with lousy leaders. I got to tell you, when I think about what I've learned about leadership and what I've implemented, I don't necessarily gravitate to the wonderful things that I learned from wonderful leaders. I think of the crappy things that I learned to never do.
Exactly.
And when I actually hear myself speaking them and doing them, it gives me pause to go, nope, Sean, you didn't like that yourself.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it now?
Yeah, exactly. So let me give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
How about the person who has standards and they love excellence and they reward you even if you make the little mistake, and they still say, you're amazing. Now, the lousy leader who has standards says, you made a tiny mistake, therefore you didn't accomplish anything, you don't matter, go sit down. And I actually had one do that to me. They demanded perfection. Now, I'm sorry, but we saved your bacon that day because we could run the cycle that night and the customer was happy. That's success, not what my manager thinks. What my customer thinks trumps what my manager ever thinks, because they're paying the bills.
Yeah.
So another example is the lousy leader with morale. They create animosity, they create resentment, and people literally stay away from them because of how they treat people. They make me question myself. So if I want good morale, how do I put those positive feelings out there? And how do I not say the wrong thing? Trust is not always on the pushing the positive. Sometimes it's holding back the negative.
Oh, yeah.
Me. It's huge if you can say, again, we had a clear vision. We stayed focused. We got it done. Our deadline was moving to the new building. But what about the other side where you're supposed to trust the leader and they have grand ideas, but they haven't made a sale in 6 months? Do you trust that person? No. So they don't have any idea how to do the short-term results. So we learn from how not to. And it's
Here we go. I'm back.
You're fine.
The phone fell. Kind of funny when you're doing this wrong mode. Okay.
I know.
So
equipment failure.
So where do you go to be encouraged to have such a positive life outlook?
Well, I'll tell you very honestly, I start with the Lord. I have to do that because that's honestly the anchor. I still have both my parents. I still have tremendous friends. I have friends from 30 years ago when I started my career. Those are the things that I'm selective as who I spend time with. I'll tell you that very honestly, Sean. I'm very selective who I spend time with because I want to also be able to lift people up. I want to notice when my friends and my associates are like, something's not right here. What's going on? And we need to be able to stop and say, no, now wait a minute. What's really going on? And to lift each other up, just like you said. Music's a big part of it for me. Reading good books is a part of it for me. Avoiding certain things like, the press,
Mhm.
the kinds of topics that there's nothing you can do about. You seriously can't. So why spend the time?
Yeah, yeah. I have friends who say things that are going on politically that you cannot affect, you should not concern yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Just concern yourself with things that you can affect. I want to go back to where you said that how when I asked you how you stay so positive, you say it begins with the Lord.
It does.
Tell me a little bit about what you see as the relationship between leadership and one's own individual faith walk.
I think it's the wisdom, because when you actually start there, I don't know if you do this, but I feel that hand on the shoulder. Don't say that. Let's not say that. Or let's go a different direction, or let's choose to bail out of this conversation because it's going the wrong way. Those kinds of things where you just kind of have that extra insight that maybe you shouldn't have, that keeps you out of trouble. Does that make sense?
It makes great sense. I am sponging it in. I don't see how, I have a challenge with leaders that say that they are all self-made, and they don't give any credit to inspiration from God, or they, when they're really pressed to explain how they lead, there is not some reference to the supernatural, specifically God. And you can go even into even more specifics, but I'm not going to say that someone of another faith I will not listen to. But if someone does not have a supernatural element to their life, I question what their core actually is.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, one of the things that I've noticed is, we talk a lot about 80-20 and choosing what we do. And if I don't sit down with the Lord and ask him what to do, I don't choose the right 20.
Oh, there you go.
So I really have got to learn how to not do the constant building like we were talking about, the constant creation, because that stuff's safe. The risky stuff is to get out there and say, let's talk to Sean. Let's talk to people on LinkedIn. Let's talk to people and get my stuff in front of people. Even if you're critical, I'm not my work. Am I good at what I do? Yes, I am. I'm very good at what I do. And I could teach anything. But that gift came from him, not me. Because I didn't know it till I was in my mid-30s.
So when you say you can teach anything, build upon that a little bit.
Well, it's always really, I don't understand it necessarily, but if I start down a path and I want to teach you something, all of the elements fall into place, from the steps to the introduction to how I want to wrap it up to what I want you to do and how to actually create that, whether it's an exercise. And you're going to see that when you go out to the website and you check out my 7 unspoken questions, because I'm trusting you to do that. And it just comes together. And I don't know why, but it's complete when I get finished with it. I leave it alone for 2 or 3 days. I come back to it and I'm like, okay, tweak it here, tweak it there. It's ready to go. And that's not me. That's the Lord working through me, because he knows I can't do that stuff on my own, especially at that level.
So how do you share in a secular world your view of faith within leadership with your team to inspire them?
I don't know, but I got called on it one time. She's like, "Oh, you always bring your beliefs in." I was like, "How did I do that?" Because even in a secular, large organization, Christians have a tendency to connect, and it's very much spirit to spirit. We can feel it. And I had a friend of mine, she was working in one of the ministries here, and she's like, "How do you guys find each other?" And I was like, "That's not hard." It's really not. If you live your life and you let the Lord shine through, people see it. And you don't have to say anything. There was a guy, I just loved him to death. It was right across the cube, the hall from me in his cube. He swore like a sailor unless I was around, and then he dropped it. And I never said anything to him. I never called him on it, but he could see my faith.
Yeah.
And I teased him and, about everything else, but I never said anything about his language. And he apologized and he stopped doing it, but I thought he was wonderful. I really did. So I think a lot of it is accepting them where they are. I'm not their judge. I am not the fourth member of the Trinity. That is not my role.
That's great.
True. I just want them to know that there's a Savior out there that cares about them. And I hope they see him in me. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. So in your everyday, as you look to re-energize, and obviously you get energy from the word, and you've told me you're an introvert. What do you like to read?
I'm glad you asked that question, because my passion is the business biographies.
Okay.
And so one of the really great ones, and the reason I like it is because I remember it. IBM in the late 80s, early 90s faltered. And the only reason I can say that is because they were trying to decide mainframe, PC, services. What are we going to do? And Hewlett-Packard was around, and there was a couple other hardware kind of nipping at their tail. And of course, then here comes Apple and all the rest of this stuff. And of course, EDS had services. That's where I was. And IBM got a new CEO. And he said, I knew I had one chance to save Big Blue. And Big Blue was huge. And I don't even know what he credited in the book, because the name of the book is Who Says Elephants Can't Dance? And his name was Louis Gerstner Jr. And he said, we're going to be the integrator. And the entire industry breathed a sigh of relief, because he said we had the breadth of talent. We had the reach in the customers. We were already in the enterprise level customers, and we knew we could pull everybody together and knit it all together. And it wasn't long after that the internet took off like a rocket, and IBM met that point in time with the technology and the needs of business, and it saved the corporation. Now that's a cool story.
That's a great story.
And he wrote it.
That I will have to find that book. I have become much more of a voracious reader. So, but the whole, whether it's 10 or 20 pages a day, you read 10 or 20 pages a day, you read a lot of books.
Yeah, you do. Now here's another one for you. Here's another one for you that's a lot of fun, and it's Emperors of Chocolate.
Okay.
Now I'm a chocolate aholic. And this is the story of Mars and Hershey. And you would think that they would want to shut down the other one, but they didn't. They did a lot of leapfrogging, and they did a lot of testing things around the globe based on especially the weather, because chocolate melts.
Right.
So our chocolate would never last in Saudi Arabia. So they had to raise the melting point. And I'm like, are you serious? So you get the story of how Hershey is in Pennsylvania and all the stuff that he wants to do for these wonderful people that he considers family. And he actually brings people in and helps them to become American citizens and teaches them how to be Americans. Talk about a great point in time. The Industrial Revolution is just taking off. Who's thinking about chocolate?
Yeah.
Except the whole country, and every drugstore in the country has a jar of penny chocolate. They're little teeny tiny bars. They have to keep them where the children can reach them. The kid puts the penny on the counter, takes a bar, and walks out. That's the way it's supposed to be. And Hershey and Mars both did it. Another great story.
Wow. So we've hit almost 31 minutes. It's a quick half hour. Let me tell you. I am so glad to have had you on the show. But what I want you to do now is to take the next 2 minutes and speak directly to the audience and those that are going to be watching this on the replay, and tell them what you think the most important thing is about leadership that they can do in their own lives.
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge business owners and newly appointed managers and leaders to ask more questions in every situation. And I don't mean the stuff you can Google. Connect with people, ask more questions. And in a few days, look for my YouTube channel of the same name, because I got to get all the content on that. And the other thing I'm going to challenge you with is build your team with people who are older than you are. Because we have a tremendous number of people who have been left without jobs. All of that experience is there. Pull it back into the companies, utilize them. They have broad experience. And whether it's in a contracting situation, an employment situation, a consulting situation, those people are ready, willing, and able. And we need them. In the entire thing, we need them. The third thing I'd say is connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out, visit the website, because I think you'll probably put the link back on the Facebook post as we finish.
I will.
Because the point is that we're building back the nation's economy. And we've got to take the approach that the men at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution took. And I can rattle their names off. It's Vanderbilt, it's Carnegie, it's Rockefeller, it's JP Morgan. They had a different view than so many business owners today, where it's like, just build something, we'll get our money out of it, and we'll move on. No, we have an economy to rebuild. And as leaders, we need to take it seriously and get it done.
Come on now. I like that. That's a good end note. So, Mialei, thank you so much for being my guest today on Litvak Leadership Live. Super insightful, great information. I encourage everyone to sit and listen to this again. Whether you watch it when you listen or when you're out walking your dog like I do, listen to this again. So much information. Everyone else, that's Litvak Leadership Live for today. We are taking the day off tomorrow. Well, I'm not taking the day off, but I'm taking it off from the show. And we'll be back Friday with another leader in another industry from another part of the country. That's it. Have a great day. Be blessed, everyone. That was fantastic.